Now, on Enough Said, with K-Fans Dan Barrero.
Because I think there are people who say, yeah, all right, there's ways in which maybe we needed a jolt to the system.
And Justin Guard.
But I'm trying to figure out who we're supposed to listen to in the administration, because there's Trump, the speaker, who we saw. Then there's Trump, the tweeter.
Enough Said.
It is time that the American people had a president fighting as hard for its citizens as other countries do for theirs. And that's exactly what I am going to do for you. Believe me.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name's Dan Barrero. Justin Guard is with me, and Lori Fisher will get us started in the control booth. Hi, Lori.
Hi, guys. You heard him right there. President Trump is really up and running in his first week of office. Some big moves, including jumpstarting construction on a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border and proposing that it could be paid for with a 20% tax increase on imports from Mexico, the suspension of issuing visas to some Muslim-majority countries, and executive orders to force construction of the Dakota Access and Keystone pipelines. Dan.
I'm already exhausted.
It's a big week.
I think that's what we're going to learn about this administration, at least early, based on the pace we're going at. It's going to be exhausting.
Does it surprise you that not as many executive orders as in President Obama's first week?
It actually does surprise me.
It surprised me. Now, there's other things that he's signed and done.
And the question would be, the executive orders are about that Trump has signed are pretty big issues.
Yeah.
Huge issues. I don't know
I don't
if they
remember
were as
either.
big with Obama. But, you know, the whole Trump mantra was drain the swamp. And I think the fear for me, and perhaps for some other people, is, okay, that sounds good, but are we replacing it with quicksand? I mean, because I think there are people who say, yeah, all right, there's ways in which maybe we needed a jolt to the system. We know that's part of why he got elected. But what are you replacing it with? And we're going at such a fast speed that it's scary to know. Starting with the wall, which, again, he said this is what he campaigned on.
Early and
nobody
often.
should be surprised. Although I'm a purist. I think if it's worth doing, and I'm not convinced it is, at those prices,
Yep.
if that's about our national security, right?
Yes.
So shouldn't that be our responsibility to pay for, in a sense, rather than someone else is going to one way or another have to pay for it?
No, I do agree with that point. I'm confused this week. Well, I'm confused by a lot of things. But I'm trying to figure out who we're supposed to listen to in the administration, because there's Trump, the speaker, who we saw. Then there's Trump, the tweeter. Then there's Spicer, press secretary guy. Then there's Priebus, he's chief of staff. And then
Correct.
there's Kellyanne Conway, right? And,
That's it.
And I'm sure there's going to be a series of other people that are added.
Did you mention Breitbart guy?
No,
That's
because
another
he's,
one, because
well,
Breitbart guy 2 days
Bannon.
ago basically said to the media, it's time for you to shut up and listen.
And everybody kind of
basically.
assumes that Trump, the speaker, is Breitbart guy,
Right.
That's what a lot of
the
people
prevailing,
are assuming. But that's what I'm most confused about this entire week,
Yes.
is that Trump will say something, he'll tweet something, someone will say 20% on taxes or on imports from Mexico, that's what's going to do it. Then 90 minutes later, somebody else comes out and says, well, we're actually looking at a big buffet of items, and we're not exactly sure that we're doing it that way, but just an option, because we're hearing all these different things. They get reported, they get run with, we all react to them, and then we hear a completely different side 90 minutes later, 2 minutes later.
Who is the press secretary? What's his name?
Sean Spicer, I think.
It's even worse than you say, because Spicer is the guy who first was among those who talked about the 20% and then said, it's part of the smorgasbord.
I just threw it out there.
Let me show you
I
that you
think
said
what we're
tweet.
learning, I think part of the trap, and this is the trap, this is a tough trap for the media, is they feel obligated to report on the stuff about the stolen elections, and then they do try to report on it, and then they get tied up in it, and then the president can double down on, see, I just threw that out, there's more important stuff, and they're obsessed with that, which plays to his crowd. And so I don't know how the media covers this thing. I will say this, I want to see the media not just cover the stolen election stuff, because I want to see his feet, the administration's feet, any administration's feet, held to the fire on the executive orders, what that policy stuff will mean. But is that as interesting to your average group? Sadly, I'm not sure it is, but I still think that's what's going to determine how damaging this administration can be, right?
We have to move on. Next up, she was a Hollywood icon and an honorary Minnesotan. Actress Mary Tyler Moore died this week.
Now that it's over, I don't feel as bad as I thought I was going to. In fact, I feel pretty good, I really do. And I owe it all to you. Thanks.
Moore was 80 years old. She's being remembered as a trailblazer for women And as we know, she'll always have a place in our hearts with her 1970s sitcom, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, putting Minneapolis on the map. Dan.
Well, can we for a second put aside the sociological implications of what she stood for, which I get for a lot of people is part of the story?
Yeah.
Can we keep it simple? It was a funny show.
It was a funny show.
And it wasn't the only funny show she was a part of. Dick Van Dyke Show, which is, of course, way before your time.
It is.
Way before Lori's
I
time.
saw it
The
at a
other
library
shows,
once, though.
That's
They had it in like an exhibit, and I got to see
It's a
it.
funny show, and that's where this thing starts. And in both cases, she was a part of a really good ensemble that played off her well. She played off some of them well. And so before we get to the other layers, then they're there. I think that's what we got to remember. What keeps people coming back to a show like that is, does it work? And especially Mary Tyler Moore Show, I think, since it's a little more recent, it really worked on several levels and made people laugh and made occasionally people think and sometimes made them blubber,
And
whatever
at the
the
end,
case may be.
making people cry
That's
like
it.
every good sitcom does. At the end of it, it's funny, but there's a heart to it,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
that's what a lot of good sitcoms, for me, unfortunately, by the time I was watching TV, it was already in Nick at Night. So
God, you're making me
it
feel
just
old.
felt
Why do you
like,
do that?
man, I'm kind of old if I'm watching this black and white. But I'm curious, and I think we see this a lot. I think we even saw it, within the last year when Prince died. As
Yes.
big as he is, Michael Jackson, same thing. There becomes this rebirth and reintroduction, or maybe for a lot of people even younger than me, which there are a lot now, sadly, that never saw the show,
Correct.
never heard of it, and now with Netflix, with different channels, with all the different ways you can find things, I'm curious if people will rediscover this show or discover
Some
it for
will.
the first time. Just watching clips this
Yeah.
week, I said, man, this was a funny show.
It was well done.
And it wasn't like it was funny because it was old. It felt like it wore well, too.
We got
Still translates.
We got emails from people, a couple people saying, because I had talked about her remarkable performance in a movie called Ordinary People, which I highly recommend even to the kids who haven't seen it.
Not
It's
if you want to feel good.
No, it's not a Friday night feel-good movie, but it's well put together about difficulties within a family after a tragedy. And she was completely off type there, which is what made her the job she did so brilliant. But a couple people emailed me and said, you know what? She was so good in that role, I couldn't stand her for a while.
Really?
Because you start thinking, well, is that really Mary Tyler Moore? And it's like, well, no. She said she saw some things in there that she identified with, but she was playing a character. And that movie performance showed her range went well beyond comedy.
Well, let's talk about her Minnesota connection, too. She was honored back in 2002 with that bronze statue. It currently stands in the Minneapolis Visitor Center. This is what she had to say about her liking Minnesota back then.
It's a very open-armed community here. I am the beneficiary of that, as are all the people who come to Minneapolis. It's what I call one of my homes. I have New York, where I live, LA, where I grew up, Brooklyn, where I was born, and Minneapolis, that took a big 7-year chunk of my life.
I'm getting emotional.
Go ahead, yeah.
Man,
I
knew
one
that
of
she
us
felt
angles,
that way.
we feel validated.
I knew she felt
through
that way
MTN.
about us. I know that even though she hasn't been here since 2002,
I
that
think it
was
was
that at the airport? I think she was ready on the tarmac to
I
get
think
out of here.
she gave the
Go back to
answer
Hollywood?
that was wanted
That
in
people
that
wanted?
situation. But I get the connection.
Yeah.
In fact, I mentioned Ordinary People. The author of the book upon which that's based, Judith Guest,
Yes.
lives in Edina, actually, and talked about her meeting Mary Tyler Moore, and that Redford wasn't sure she was up to that job. So we got actually a lot of connections in a lot of ways. And, look, we do feel like we're flyover country.
We do, yeah.
Coming up next on Enough Said.
I don't know much about any of it, right?
That should be fair regardless of the case.
Yeah,
frankly,
and we're
whether it's well known or not.
I think we're all playing catch up a little bit on Title IX investigation.
It's grim, but it is what it is. And it's not that uncommon. And as they said down there, it's one of their best success stories. So, you have to do what you have to do in life.
Less than 24 hours after Governor Dayton fainted at his State of the State speech, he announced that he's been diagnosed with prostate cancer. A biopsy confirmed it last week. The governor plans to finish his final 2 years of his term. He just turned 70 on Thursday, and as we know, he's had a number of health issues since taking office in 2011. Dan.
Yeah, it was the video, which we've probably seen enough, was grim. It was a little bit scary.
Very scary.
And as far as we know, I guess, there's no, he said he was going to the governor said he was going to undergo some tests to be sure there's not some
At some point this week.
Some underlying condition at some point. I don't know where we are with that. But we were reminded that when you're in a position of authority like that, there ain't no such thing as privacy. And as he admitted, there really shouldn't be. That you got to know what you got to know, and that he said he intended to talk about the prostate cancer the following week after he found out what the regimen was going to be.
And that was already scheduled. He was going to go do that regardless, right?
And then, he has the news conference saying, my staff said, might as well get this out now because of what just took place. So it's going to be, I think, something the reporters are going to have to watch. And I don't think that's being intrusive. I mean, in this case, it's a pretty important issue. He's been pretty, he's had a pretty good schedule, but people are going to pay attention to see if it has any impact on what he's able to accomplish. There's no reason to think that this kind of cancer should get in the way.
No, it's the second most common cancer in men. As he said, I think, referring to that in the soundbite, it's very treatable, it's survivable. You look at the 5-year rates, 15-year rates. Even his dad, he mentioned, had it in like his 60s. Lived to be 97 years old. Exactly. So you never want to hear that word. It's jarring when you see the whole week of collapsing, not knowing exactly what happened, then to hear that he has cancer. It's not a great week, obviously, and it does shake you up a little bit. But he says, if I don't feel like I can do it, and I think he'll get pushback, I think people will let him know, I think, whether it's internally or externally. You would think, health-wise, you want what's best for him, first of all. Forget about if he can do the job. You want what's best for the governor of your state regardless, but they're going to probably look at it and say, well, you thought you could do it, but maybe you can't. Maybe you should look at it. We had unity for about an hour
or so
till the next morning.
Sadly, that part of it's not going to change. I mean, the bad blood that exists between the Republicans and DFLers and the governor pretty clear. So I don't think this deal is going to necessarily change that or make them get along any better. It'd be stunning if it did, but I don't think it's going to make any difference.
Okay,
2 years left, right?
That's it.
2019.
That's
right. Okay, moving on. 2 days of appeal hearings for the 10 suspended Gopher football players. The players are fighting the university discipline for alleged sexual assault. The case was never charged out, but the school says the players still violated sexual harassment or sexual assault policies. Justin.
2 things that I'm curious about with these hearings. These hearings have been on the books, or we've been waiting for these hearings for a long time, right? I'm curious what you think about, should they be open to the public, number one? Because now if you see, Paul Bloom was there yesterday, they put up these huge barriers where you basically don't even know if they're in the room or not. So I'm curious if you think that there should be some public component to it. I go back and forth on that. But secondly, to lump all 10 of them together, which they've also done, is it impossible to do one? Because the attorneys are saying they've got no chance because you're lumping all of them together, and it's going to be basically one tie, we all tie, and it's going to be hard to differentiate. So I'm conflicted on those, 2 issues, I guess.
They're both good questions. I don't think there can be a public component if there isn't ordinarily. I don't think you can change the rules.
That's true.
Although the irony, of course, is there's greater interest, and their names are out there publicly in a way that others that weren't as well known wouldn't be. But to me, you can't change that. I think your second point's a huge one. And I think to follow up on the second point, I heard one of the attorneys representing the players, and if he's accurate with this, and that's the if, he suggested yesterday that new stuff was introduced that was not only had not been a part of the criminal investigation or the earlier session in which the conclusion had been reached that these players needed to be either suspended or kicked out. That, to me, is dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't. At some point, there has to be some fairness for those who are accused. And to introduce new stuff at this point worries me again about this whole process. There cannot be a predisposition to come to any kind of conclusion. And if they're going to have a chance, and I'm not sure they are as a group, like you said, if you're not going to do this individually, then I don't think there's any fairness to a process about adding stuff at this late date that has not been introduced before. That makes no sense to me.
Is it also fair to know who's on the panel, who comprises the panel, who's making the decisions?
I think that's fair.
Where they come from, what biases they might have. I don't know much about any of it, right?
That should be fair regardless of the case.
Yeah,
frankly,
and
whether it's well known or not.
I think we're all playing catch up a little bit on Title IX investigations. We certainly were when this first broke. I'd forgotten that this was even a possibility after criminal charges weren't filed. But I guess there's a lot that I hope comes of this scenario, but I hope everybody's Title IX departments are asking these questions and answering these questions to make sure there is fairness for everybody, victim included, by the way.
Victim included.
I don't mean to make this one-sided here.
Well, real quick for before Lori has to jump in, part of the problem again is I think there's a chance there could be different outcomes because the criminality is, if you want to use that term, is very different in terms of the accusations.
From
That's
person
what's
to person.
concerning about lumping the groups into, I guess, 2 groups of 5, I think.
Okay, here we go. The stage is set for Super Bowl 51 in Houston. The Falcons will take on the Patriots next weekend. Dan, you thought the Packers were going all the way. Now what?
Well, it ain't going to be the Packers.
No, they're out.
You can take that to the bank, to Vegas. The Packers are not going to win it. Yeah, I was disappointed. I thought it would be a good ball game.
I was not disappointed. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, you made that clear last week.
I was not disappointed at all.
Schadenfreude for you.
But go ahead.
We're happy for you.
And now their roads are in shambles because WizDot's got $1 billion. So they've got all kinds of problems.
Was it a $2 billion shortfall? Whatever it was.
The Packers lose, the state bottoms out. That's what happens.
I go right now. Early pick. I'm going.
How do you bet against Brady?
In Belly and Brady, we trust. I can't get in the way of them. Can you?
No, I can't.
They're ridiculous.
But I think the Falcons, just being in this game, people have been doubting the Falcons for years,
including me,
with good reason. Though I don't think it was bad reasoning to doubt the Falcons. They shocked me in what they did to Green Bay. I know Green Bay's defense was not always that good. But let's face it, Atlanta had all the pressure in that game, given it was at home, given the Packers were loosey-goosey on the road, maybe the hottest team in football. A lot of people, they were a very trendy pick to get there, and Atlanta just ran right through them. Green Bay helped them with a couple of turnovers.
Well, the depressing part, if you're a Vikings fan, again, is look at the quarterbacks.
Yes.
Those are top of the line. Now, Matty Ice, there was the same question about, well, can he really do it in the clutch?
But he's going to win the MVP now this year.
But he had a terrific year.
Yeah.
And he's now all the way to the Super Bowl, whether he wins it or not. Those are the 2 quarterbacks we're dealing with. Well, look at the 4.
Yes.
Who else? Big Ben and Aaron Rodgers.
Pretty good.
I know you're a Bradford oboe.
I like
whatever.
Sam.
And I don't mind him.
He's not at that level.
They did the best. He's not even close to being at that level.
No, the defense would need to be a lot better, I think, next year. Well, a lot of things would have to be a lot better.
We got a lot of work to do, man.
But none of this really matters, the Super Bowl in Houston this week, because Monday.
It's
1 week from Monday.
The clock.
We're on the clock.
It's all about us.
52 weeks. The world's eyes, the NFL's eyes, are going to be on Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And you know why you're going to be even further depressed? The Packers will be there.
I actually think you're right.
They're going to invade Minnesota.
That does worry me.
The Mall of Hysteria, and you're going to have to put up with them for a 2-week stretch.
They're going
to raise the trophy in the People's Minnesota Stadium.
The People's Stadium.
That would be the worst nightmare.
They could do their parade route at Nicollet, too, because there's so many Packer fans that actually live here.
Well, better here than there, because they can't travail the roads there. Apparently.
It would hurt the economy, I think, actually, if it were Green Bay or if it were Wisconsin being here, because we need people to travel here for weeks at a time, talking about the fans.
Coming up next on Enough Said.
It's just satire when it's somebody we don't like, and then when it happens to the guy we like or a member of his family, then it's like off limits.
It's time for the lightning round. Fox Sports reporter Erin Andrews shares some really personal information that she battled cervical cancer last fall. She told her doctor she didn't want to miss any games. Justin.
And she didn't. That was, I don't know if you read that story. It was on Peter King's website, SI.com.
I did not.
Going through, getting some treatment, having a surgery, telling the doctor I'm not missing the game. She's standing, I think, at Lambeau Field 2 days after she had some pretty invasive surgery, right? Cancer surgery for the first time. She's been through, people argue she's polarizing, right? People argue about her all the time. But when it comes to some of the things she's had to put up with, and now in her private life, pretty interesting story of resilience there. I do give her credit for that.
Well, I'm a big believer in you got to do what you got to do, and if you're going to have to miss a game, miss the damn game. To take care of it. But I'm assuming that's her business.
It worked out well.
We do learn, and how young she is. I mean, everybody, you start figuring out it's got something.
Yes.
I think that's
Next
the
up,
lesson.
The Vikings announced that Pat Shurmur is now the permanent interim offensive coordinator. In an interview, head coach Mike Zimmer said Pat is open to suggestions and not one of those guys who kind of knows everything. Is Zimmer possibly throwing shade to the old coach, Dan?
Not possibly.
I don't know how, other than naming Turner, or whispering North Turner.
Yep.
I don't know how you go any further than he does. And to be honest, I don't understand why at this point. All it does is confirm that when the Vikings people kind of pushed back at the notion that there was something behind the scenes, that there was a schism, that they were making it up, that there clearly was a schism. So I'd rather they just be honest about that than pretend that there wasn't. And now I guess this is the passive-aggressive Minnesota way.
At 3 years in, we've finally gotten to him. It is weird for a guy who's supposed to be very straightforward. with the players, which it sounds like he is, there were a couple scenarios this year where he wasn't. You know, the whole Teddy Bridgewater initial injury, remember, with the shoulder where
what happens?
He blew by that. What's
Fat
that?
Cats get slaughtered.
Okay, George
Great motivational try.
George Orwell's classic 1984 is #1 on Amazon, the book about language itself being held captive. This after the buzz over the size of the inauguration crowds. Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway was using that alternative facts lingo. Justin?
It's a hashtag already, alternative facts. Take me back to 1984.
Much.
You've taken us back with Mary Tyler Moore. Lori and I don't really understand why this book is a big deal or what it was like at the time. I was 2 years old. I think Lori was younger than that.
Well, that's just the name of the book.
Oh,
that's not when it was done. That's the old George Orwell sort of beware of Big Brother and government coming together.
Famous TV commercial
creating
too,
their
right?
own language, et cetera, et cetera. That we might have a dictator in the White House is what I think how people are using it. Well,
yes.
I'm not quite ready to get that hysterical yet.
Another week,
though? Who knows? We'll see exactly where it goes.
Okay, here we go.
Alternative facts was an interesting way to put it.
Alternative facts. I am older than you, Justin.
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt.
A Saturday Night Live writer has been suspended indefinitely for an offensive tweet about Barron Trump. When it comes to politics, shouldn't kids be off limits, Dan?
Well, yeah, they should be off limits, but let's face it, we're frauds. Once again, because we feel like it's just satire when it's somebody we don't like, and then when it happens to the guy we like or a member of his family, then it's like off limits.
Yeah.
Now, most people on both sides, I think, in this one are saying off limits, but again, it's stupid. It's ridiculous, but it's nothing new. I mean, we've had that. There have been shots at other family members of other politicians.
I don't like it.
I don't like any of it, but your rage tends to depend on which side you're on, sadly.
What's interesting is this SNL writer, Twitter, and Billy Bush, for example, have taken more heat and lost more than the president, who does whatever he wants at any time.
It's Venus versus Serena in the Australian Final Open. Saturday will be the Williams sisters' first Grand Slam final against one another since Wimbledon in 2009 when Serena won in straight sets. Justin.
Great week for my.
It's a big week for you.
Oh, you got Federer and Nadal in the men's side.
How old are they?
They're all late 30s. Well, Federer's about my age, mid 30s. Nadal's a little bit younger. Venus is 36. It's like, speaking of 1984 and the Mary Tyler Moore show, it's like this could. It's unbelievable.
Was age seldom served in tennis like this?
Well, it is now because the better players are playing longer into their careers. 30 is allegedly the new 20.
And finally,
we'll find out. But it's been a great week.
Zach Lavine with the Timberwolves and two-time NBA Slam dunk champ will not be taking part in the contest next month. Dan, what does this mean for Aaron Gordon with the Orlando Magic?
You're going to put money on him now.
I'm just glad. I'll answer the question this way. I'm glad Levine's out. I hope Towns is out of the skills and he won it.
He's a defending champ.
We're supposed to be ascending to a level where all we really are concerned about is making it to that ceremonial game that's played on Sunday. It's a joke, but at least that's the game about those are supposed to be the best players.
Basketball
Can we not
gods.
Make it about
well,
that?
basketball gods.
Let's get serious.
They announced they're not participating, and they lose last night.
That didn't help.
In a game that they probably could have won. The commissioner was there,
which we're still capable of doing.
PJ Fleck was there with his wife. Everybody was there last night.
Obviously the team wasn't Flecknitized.
They weren't. They probably didn't know he was there.
He should have given the halftime speech instead of Tibbs.